About to roll the dice, that's why all my life I've been grinding all my life, all my life, grinding all my life. Sacrifice, hustle pay the price. Wanna slice, about to roll the dice, that's why all my life I've been grinding all my life.
Welcome to another episode of Inside the Grind, where my goal is to highlight our Pasifika athletes and share their story of how they got to where they are now. I am so excited and grateful for today's episode. We have an amazing guest. What she does and who she is so inspiring and life-changing. Just by my research I've done on her, she brings so much light to this world. And again, I am so grateful to have her here. She is a motivational speaker and fitness and wellness coach. More importantly, she is a mother and a wife. I'd love to introduce LITA Lewis.
Hi, thank you so much for that introduction.
No, of course. It's so important to let people know who you are. And I'm so thankful. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for your time. How are you doing? What are you currently up to right now?
Firstly, thank you for having me. As mentioned, it is always such a pleasure and an honor to be able to speak on platforms that speak directly to our people and our communities. So it means the most to me, and I'm super passionate about sharing whatever I can to bring value to your audience. What am I doing now? I feel like I am doing everything, and I'm not special. I know there's a lot of women out there that are wearing many hats, playing many roles. But to answer your question in short, I'm running several businesses. I have a household to keep up, 4 kids to keep in order, along with my husband, clients to attend to, content to create, a whole bunch of things. Everything, life is keeping me busy.
Gosh, no. Are you able to elaborate a bit more on your businesses and what they are?
Yeah, sure. So I actually own my own apparel line. So out of like key messaging that I'm constantly using on my social media platforms, and just in learning to brand myself and expand my business, there were certain things that I was saying that essentially motivated people to say like, oh my goodness, can you put that on a t-shirt? Which evolved into different types of apparel that is like super body conscious and really highlighting the fact that women come in all different shapes and sizes, and that those sizes should be celebrated. So this apparel line is something I'm passionate about because one, it's super colorful, cheerful. A lot of what we have, tanks, t-shirts, and hoodies have some really fun little sayings like thick thighs save lives, for instance. Just to give
I heard that. Yep.
I'm running that solely.
No, wow.
On my own, which is fun, and trying to expand that, especially these days. And then outside of, wearing the title of health and fitness influencer, there are certain, work is like creating content and aligning with certain partners that I align with in bringing certain brands and services and highlighting what they're doing. So there's always this idea of creation and creating, whether or not it's workouts, and creating content for my training app, or working with a brand that I'm passionate about and sharing whatever it is that they are trying to promote also is also another part or component of my business as well.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you just for everything that you're creating and, continue to inspire. But I know this pandemic has been different, for so many people, but how has this pandemic been for you?
Yeah, the question is a good question. And in answering that, firstly, I recognize there are so many people that are at a disadvantage, and because of the pandemic, they may not be at work or having to adjust and pivot in certain ways that is outside their normal, not just for themselves, for their family. I do say very humbly that, being in this pandemic has actually had me pivot a lot of my business too, taking a lot of things online, and something that I was neglecting to do pre-COVID. But because I've done so, I've actually done really well. Like I've found kind of a voice in the online space and creating value, as well as maintaining this idea of energy and charisma for my audience has been something that I didn't think that I would be able to do so well, but now I'm actually really enjoying. Not to say that I don't like being around people, because I absolutely do.
Yes.
But business and work has been really, really good for me and such a blessing. So again, it first pushed me in an uncomfortable zone where I had to force myself to do something different. Yeah. And although it had been planned for, I never executed. And since the pandemic and certain restrictions placed on us, especially living in California, where the rules have been somewhat strict in comparison to other states, I've made those pivots and those changes, and it's working out really well. So I've been really blessed.
That's so great to hear. I can relate to that, because like this pandemic for me personally has been like a blessing in disguise. So that's so awesome. So now, diving into your story, and you grew up in Sydney, Australia. Are you able to touch a little bit on that and growing up?
For sure. Yeah. So I was actually born in Los Angeles. My parents that were married here, I was born here. And then my mother, being Samoan and Tuvaluan, grew up in Auckland, New Zealand. And then obviously had family in the islands. So a majority of my family are across Samoa, New Zealand, and Australia. So I think I was 2 years old, and my mother got super homesick. She was over it. She was over LA, over not being around her family, and told my dad she wanted to move back. Mm-hmm. And so, from a very young age, I grew up around my predominantly Samoan family. And I always say this, like, now living in the United States, people see like a Black woman, which I'm also very proud of, being that my father is African-American, but in heart and spirit, I feel very Polynesian, because essentially this is the tribe that raised me,
Yeah.
So growing up in Australia was, I think now as an adult, I realize in hindsight, was perhaps the best experience ever. I always say, who needs friends when you have 100 cousins that are people you grow up with and that are truly your best friends. And I say that, like many of us say that. I come from a sporty family, sports, and the family dynamic is second to none. And I say that especially because I'm now removed and I miss that so much. But in whole, growing up in Australia with my mother's side of the family was probably, now think about, the best memories of my life.
No, that's so great to hear. Like, so, I mean, do you like Samoan food? What if you do, what? What's your favorite? What are your favorite dishes?
Oh my gosh. Well, so much, but I think what I miss the most is literally my my grandpa's taro, coconut taro.
Oh.
So I miss that. I miss polosami. I miss chop suey. I miss, what else do I miss? I'm just thinking about my auntie's cooking. God, there's so much I miss. It's just in general. And now that I say it out loud, I can't even tell you the last time I have actually had Polynesian food. It was probably when I was back home a couple of years ago.
Oh, the food it's so good though. But
it is good. Like I say, everything in moderation, family.
Exactly. No, exactly. So now you left Sydney in 2007, and then you moved to Brooklyn.
Yeah.
How was that change? How was that change for you?
I was so young. I had never even been to New York City before I decided to buy a one-way ticket to New York. To ask that question, or to answer that question, is so loaded because I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah.
I think when I was 23, when I first moved there, I went with such a tenacity for life and this idea that anything that I ever wanted and ever dreamed of would come true. And usually sometimes that is said with some naiveness, but in looking back, it was everything that I thought it was going to be and then some. I never anticipated to be there that long, but it certainly did shape the woman that I am today, as far as it being the primary place I spent majority of my adult life. And I was so green. I was so Aussie and so naive that a city like New York City could have made or broke me, you know? And I think that being there really revealed a lot of things to me as a young adult. And I grew to love the city and look at it for all that it was, and that it and the promises that it had. And I went after every goal that I had set out, especially when I first moved there. And so now it's one of my fondest places to go back and visit. But I certainly have become like a real Brooklyn girl at heart as well.
That's amazing. Well, when did you know you wanted to become a fitness and wellness coach?
Yeah, well, that was never the plan. I tell you that much. I always say I kind of fell into this business. It was not intentional at all. I worked when I first moved to New York. I worked in the corporate space in like online media and advertising, and there had a very, very high string role, and I was working crazy hours for an insane boss and all that jazz. And then life took a turn. My relationship dissolved, and it was I was very heartbroken. My job was taking a toll, and I kind of hit a rock bottom. And I knew I had to kind of fix the problem because I had lost a lot of weight. I know that I was depressed. I was really struggling to find like just happiness and this idea. Sorry, I'm out south, so I feel like my hair Beyonce vibes right now. But, I hit rock bottom, and I was not in a good place. So I remember thinking the only thing that I remember that made me feel good was to move. And so I walked into a gym, signed up for a gym membership, and went crazy. And very quickly transformed my body. My mindset also transformed some months later. And then I joined Instagram. And at the time, my whole life was this idea of working out and trying to better myself inside and out. And so that was a lot of the content that I was sharing. And it wasn't until I was sharing and hearing feedback from those that were following me, I found a great purpose in wanting to help people. So if I could help myself with these things and these methods and what I was doing, I was sharing it, and it was helping perfect strangers from all over the world. And it was then, I believe, that God revealed to me what is essentially my God-given purpose is to live an honest life and do what makes me feel good and happy. What I always say is create the life that I love. In doing so, sharing that with an audience that I've built online and helping other people do the same. So that is when, it's a long-winded way of telling you, girl, that
no, it's okay. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I found purpose in wanting to help people and then be in this space of health and wellness by first sort of diagnosing myself and then using those methods and ways to help other people.
No, thank you for once you figured out what works best for you, but then sharing it to others. I think that's just amazing. That's just so life-changing. That's just so life-changing to me. And I truly love that. Well, can you dive in, and what does a typical day look like for you? What time do you get up? What does your diet look like? When do you work out? And do you meditate or journal?
Girl, you asked a lot. A typical day.
Yeah.
Okay, so a typical day, as boring as it may sound, would be that I wake up around 7:30. I'm also waking up with 4 kids in the house. We are homeschooling, so we're making sure they eat breakfast and then have their laptops and everything set up for school at 8:20. And then once they're locked in, I find myself then doing the same, laptop open, going through my work emails for the day and aligning my whole day for the rest of the day. I will eat breakfast while I'm doing so. So I always find that it's kind of funny that people ask me what I eat because it's very boring. I'm a coffee drinker, so it definitely makes some coffee. Yeah. But then I usually eat 3 egg whites and 1 yolk, English muffin. I sometimes I make a salad and put avocado in that and eat that together. That's pretty typical, nothing exciting. And then the kids go on break. I make sure big bro can watch his younger 3 brothers while I run to work. So I'll see a few clients that I train currently outside. I'll come back after a couple hours, back on the laptop. And then I probably have to create some type of content, whether or not it's workout content or anything that I need to do business wise with the collaborative partnerships that I have. Girl, I have a Skype call, a Zoom call, a conference call to chime into, more emails. Then my husband at some point gets home. We start dinner together. Then I'm back at the gym seeing a couple more clients. I do find time to work out either early morning before the kids wake up, or late evening once dinner is done. But for the most part, girl, I'm like everybody else out here, just trying to get stuff done, making sure 4 kids are fed, are schooled, and bathed before they go to bed, and making sure that I can at least have a conversation with my husband at some point in the day.
That I think that's important. Being sure to touch base with your husband or your partner once throughout the day, because life can be busy. But you touched on it, about the diet. Although it's simple, but how can you just let us know how important your diet, like a diet, is? To
For sure.
your life.
So I live in this space where, many years ago, I was a very strict dieter. I was counting calories, my macros, making sure I got enough protein, carbs, like the whole thing. And that's when life allowed me to do that. It aligned with having a lot of free time. I was single, no kids, lived on my own. So, I'm saying all of this to say that as life changes, change with your life. I feel like don't ever force yourself into a habit or a schedule that you cannot sustain. I just feel like it sets us up for failure and doesn't do anything to us mentally. It always works against us. So these days, I take food as like a 80-20 approach. 80%, I'm making sure that I'm feeding my body what it needs, especially if I want to be active and perform, whether or not I'm in the gym or trekking up a mountain, because I like to hike. But then 20% of the time, I'm totally okay with having a slice of pizza with the kids on a Friday night, or, going to get dessert with them sometime during the weekend. It's all about moderation and balance for me. And I think that's especially important, especially if I'm talking to busy moms that are wearing many hats and have many roles in the household. But in fairness, again, I also say I eat well because I honor my body. I know that if I eat like crap, I feel like crap. It is that simple. So even this idea of like, well, I only treat myself here and there because I deserve it is cool, but I also deserve to feel good.
Yeah.
So I will say, people say, well, how do you eat so healthy all the time? And it's simply put, because it makes me feel good. And healthy eating shouldn't taste horrible. Healthy eating should actually taste amazing. And so what I'm cooking is to my taste buds. Like I'm not just cooking baked chicken and broccoli. I'm certainly not eating that like 5 times a day. But I think that people need to change their relationship with food and not see it necessarily as a reward all the time. Because people say, I deserve this. I mean, by all means, sometimes we deserve to have whatever we want. But if you change the narrative and change your relationship about how you look at food, then you can say things like, my body deserves this. And we know that when we say that, we're honoring our bodies and making sure we're feeding it and fueling it with the right food so we can perform better, so we can think better, so we can sleep better. Our diet and our food is attached to everything, even our quality of sleep. So I always say sometimes for those people that are 100% eating horribly, it's very hard to grasp these concepts. For anybody out there that understands what it takes to eat a healthy diet and what you get and benefit from doing so, you already know I'm speaking your language. It makes you feel better. So therefore you do better and everything else falls in line. Does that make sense?
Of course, yes, it does. Because I'm someone that's very I what's the word? I focus. It's important to what I eat. I take my eating very serious. And with what you said, that was just like a gem. It's just like, yeah, just taking it all in. So was there a time though in your life where you hit adversity and you hit a challenge?
Oh yes.
Are you able just to touch on that?
Yeah, I think what is life without adversity? I think looking at adversity now, I can say this because I went through it, but in hindsight now, when I'm speaking with the kids, especially the oldest, like we should welcome adversity. Like when it happens to us, we have to understand that this is what life's about. It's never always like this. It's like this.
Mm-hmm.
And having to adapt to those situations is key. When you're down, you can recognize that you're down, so you build and sharpen the tools to get back up. And when you're up, to know how to humble yourself and realize that this is not necessarily normal. So when you're down here do you understand what I'm saying?
Of course I do, yes.
I hear that adversity is always perceived as with negative connotations. I no longer adopt or subscribe to. To me, adversity is literally an opportunity to test yourself in this game of life and then level up. So have I gone through adversity? Absolutely. In many ways, professionally, personally. And I think if you wanted me to elaborate on something specific, I think a big game changer in my life is when I spoke of that heartbreak that kind of changed a lot for me many, many moons ago. I was in a relationship that dissolved, and it was a horrible, horrible ending. And I think also perhaps I was young and naive and really attached to my personal happiness with somebody else, which I recognize now is not the thing to do. In fact, when I speak to young women and mentor them, I always say your personal happiness is yours, only yours. It should never be attached to someone or something, because anything external is fleeting and vulnerable. So that's, this happened. And I think with my work going crazy and what was required of me, I just found myself in this perpetual vortex that was going to rock bottom.
Yeah.
I think, I was also away from my family, and I speak of that. I'll speak of family because family has always been my priority. For family to me is literally everything. And I was too prideful to tell, FaceTime my mother or even speak to my sisters or dad and tell them that I had been heartbroken, because I never, I have a Samoan mother. So it's like a lot of pride and this idea that you should be down and out and drop a whole lot of weight and be depressed because someone broke your heart. What?
Yeah.
Do you remember who you are and where you come from? Like, no, pick yourself up and keep on going. So I remember being too ashamed to tell my mom, and I spiraled down a lot to where I almost didn't recognize myself in the mirror. I dropped almost 30 pounds in complete denial. But every time I left my apartment, I had a big smile on my face, letting the world know that I was okay. That was not the case. And I remember one morning I had, just a horrible breakdown. I had cried myself to sleep, cried myself waking up, getting ready to work, and my whole face was puffy and daunt because I had lost a little weight. And I remember saying to myself, you are not going to make it on your own. Like, you either need to pick up your stuff and go home to Australia, which, by the way, I was 7 years in at this point. So that would have been kind of like, really? Or you figure life out, like figure it out. And I'm like, can you imagine coming back home to Australia after having lived this successful life in the eyes of your parents, coming home, knocking on your mother's door, looking horrible. And you know what it's like to come home to a Samoan family looking very frail. It's not good. And then say, well, someone broke my heart.
Oh, yeah.
Me, I was like, never. I was like, what am I gonna do? So I decided to throw myself in the gym. And that's where I found a new lease on life. A lot of people say fitness saved my life, and it sounds very cliche, but fitness absolutely saved my life. I found self-love again. I found purpose in wanting to move and honor my body. And because I was doing that, I knew I had to fuel it all over again if I wanted to be in the gym again for 2 hours the next day. So
Mm-hmm.
it was really the foundation of hitting an adversity, like understanding something bad happened, understanding why it happened, then being in a denial about it, and then recognizing that if you don't make a change, like things are not going to end well,
Yeah.
and having the courage to change it. And then once you change it, then find true health being not just physical and not what you see in the mirror, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually get yourself into a better place. So again, I do talk a lot, so please
No,
stop.
no. Oh my gosh! But what you're saying though, I feel this message will like help others, and so like when adversity hits, especially during this moment, um, I know it was tough at first, but once you became aware of it, what was your thought process to help you get through that? What were the things you were thinking to help you get through every single day? Like when you woke up, what were because I feel it's so important, like your self-talk is so important. So
Yeah.
are you just able to just elaborate on that?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I couldn't do it on my own.
Mhm.
When you've been, whether or not you've say lost a job or had a heartbreak or had some type of loss in your family, even, like, sometimes you don't recognize the whys or why you feel this way outside of like something tragic happening. So it's really hard to identify how you can get up from a hard place. Sometimes you just want to be there. And I think for me, the denial kept me weighted to the bottom. Like it's like having shackles to my ankles. And I recognized that the denial is here. I chose to believe something that wasn't true. I chose to comfort myself with lies. And I chose to choose this idea of too prideful to show my family or tell my family that I was vulnerable and that I was sad. So it was first hard, and I say that as a disclaimer before I say this. Everything in life that is good stems from this idea of self-love and having this understanding that you are worthy of all things. You are created from your creator to be amazing, to be great, to be phenomenal, to help yourself and help those around you, to better humanity. You are that. You are always that. You are always meant to be everything you desire. And of course, when you're sad and heartbroken or grieving, or you don't think this way, sometimes it takes a rock bottom to be like, this is not right, and it's going to end badly if I don't figure it out. For me, it was moving my body. I remember thinking in a desperate state, like, oh my gosh, if I continue down this path and not tell anybody, I'm going to die. Whether or not I die completely spiritually and I find myself disconnected, I pick up a bad habit, whatever it may be, I was going to die. And it sounds dramatic, but that's really how I felt.
Yeah.
And the only thing that saved me in those moments of desperation was this idea of, well, what makes you feel good? Just finding the opposite. And I literally was like, well, I miss my family. I love my family, but I couldn't tell them, nor they were also 18-hour flight away. And so I'm like, I don't know, but I was always an athlete growing up. I come from a huge sports family. And I was like, I got to just move. Maybe I'll just go run around the track, or maybe I'll go to the gym and lift something heavy. I know movement feels good. That's exactly what I did. And in doing so, I didn't automatically like find my health. It was with repetitive action that I recognized if I move my body, it makes me feel a certain way. If I wanted, and it felt good. And if I wanted to repeat this tomorrow and the next day and the next day, I have to fuel my body and eat good food so I can shake away soreness and combat, this delayed onset muscle soreness and all these types of things that we're all familiar with if you're an athlete. So you start doing that. When you start moving, your body starts to feel good. You start fueling it well, you feel good, and then your body will start to change. When your body starts to change, your confidence starts to change, right? In my moments of betterment, I also realized that even though my physical body was changing, I would still go home and cry myself to sleep. So people would say, "Oh, my girl, you looking good. I see you. What you doing?" But I would go home and still be really sad. And I was like, "Well, why is that? I look amazing. Why do I not feel here and hear amazing?" So I started reading self-help books. I was the person that started to get really intentional about prayer and meditation. I started reading a lot. Oh my goodness, I read a lot. I created vision boards, multiple vision boards that I would stick around my apartment. I'd buy Post-its and a marker, and I would write positive affirmations to myself and put them all around my apartment, my bathroom mirror, my fridge door, my front door, everywhere. And then I started to do what I moved to the United States for. I started to travel again. So I started traveling, and I traveled not as a tourist, but off the beaten path, so to speak. And it was then in experiencing different cultures, and literally witnessing, this idea of third world countries, being without, but being so happy. And I remember thinking, sitting back and witnessing these things, like, who am I to have let somebody make me feel this way when there's others in this world that may not have enough money to feed their children, or find pure happiness in kicking around a homemade soccer ball. And it changed a lot for me. And I feel like with everything going on, I was starting to serve like my mental health, my spiritual health, that then was healing my emotional health. And in doing so, I recognized that I was hitting all aspects of what we should see as healthy, not just the body, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually as well. And I became that cliche. I became the prayer, the meditator, the crystals, the burning of sage. I became that person. But it has really helped me center myself, humble myself deeply, and understand that self-love really is my responsibility, and something that is literally my armor in being resilient to future adversities. So, yeah, again, long-winded.
No. But I mean, like, you're just like it. I'm so grateful because you're just speaking my language. Because I'm on this personal, like, I'm on like this self-discovery and just becoming the best version of myself every single day by living with purpose and intent. And so just like now going into my next question, I've learned that just, the more self-aware you become, and it's crazy because I've learned that it's about unlearning a lot of habits and behaviors that you've learned or seen growing up. Are you able to touch on the importance of habits, and unlearning habits that no longer serve you, or habits or traits, and just that, and how important that is?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I was really lucky and blessed to have a mother that was really in tune with healthy habits. I mean, she grew up, obviously in a Samoan, Tuvaluan family, and even eating habits, and what's considered very normal, as she recognized, was not necessarily the healthiest options, and a lot of it is very carb heavy. And I think my sisters and I were very active and very sport driven. And my mother knew that in order for you to perform good tomorrow, we need to feed you X, Y, and Z. And so I think I was really lucky in doing so. I have family that perhaps look at what's a normal diet, and accept that as a normal, especially a Polynesian diet, and then be overweight and not so active. And I think that usually when I'm home and again enjoying all these foods, I also speak on like what we're eating and what this means and how our body processes things like that, which I'm sure my cousins get quite annoyed with. But it is really important to change the narrative around what we consider normal and what we consider like healthy. Because a lot of the things I do remember growing up is it's just cultural, and because it's cultural, it's okay. But we are family people, and so our culture is practiced often and a lot, and so therefore we have to recognize that some of these things that we do is not good habits. And I think that's definitely one thing that I took on, especially as I grew into my adulthood and understanding why my mother chose to do things like we never had soda in the house, like things of like that nature. And if I ever wanted to snack on something, I didn't have access to potato chips and candy. It was always fruit. My mom had fruit in the house all the time. So, you know, I essentially, when it came to diet, there were certain habits I had to change from kind of like, say, extended family. But I will say, growing up in my own household, my mother was really savvy about those type of things. But I had to change culturally my mindset, knowing I can't eat like this all the time. It has to be in moderation. And I think another habit that I changed has nothing to do necessarily with a diet per se, but I would say I was raised very traditionally, in a sense of like my parents instilled this idea of hard work. Like, you know, you go to school, you work hard, you get good grades, you graduate, you go to college, you know, or university, as we say in Australia. You go to school, you know, you get good grades, you graduate, you get yourself a good job. And I think, like many of us, that was the standard of success. And, you know, I being that I'm the oldest of three, my parents expected me to lead by example, which is actually where follow the LITA comes from, is this idea of constantly wanting to make the right decisions because my siblings were looking to me as a leader. And what I recognized that when I moved to New York and I started finding my own voice and my own identity as a woman, I recognize that this standard of success that I think my parents raised me up in was a lie. It was a lie because what I recognized I went to school for, I really didn't want to pursue professionally. And then when I was in that professional settings, yes, I was making good money, but I was not happy. It was just constant grind for somebody else, and wasn't fulfilling, certainly not my purpose in life, or anything for that matter. Only a paycheck that came very regularly, that I could contribute to a 401k and all these great things and pay my bills on time. But I wasn't happy. And now, because I'm very conscious and I've done so much personal work to get to this place, I've changed my complete definition of what it is to be successful, you know? And I think that is a habit I had to not only break for myself, but I also had to explain to my parents, because when I did up and quit my job, they were like,
Yeah.
why? You know, like, and so explaining that and you know, really explaining why and what I was going to do and what it was going to do for me was a process, you know. And now they're very proud that I've taken the reins of life and pursued something that I'm passionate about, that I'm able to monetize and live a very successful life because I'm happy, and not because my bank account is constantly being, you know, I mean, it is now, right? But now for myself. So it's if that answers your question, there's also that kind of habit or habitual thinking of what it is to be successful.
No, thank you. I'm just learning. I'm just know that you're kind of like coaching me in this right now, like, you know, just by your answers. And it's just so powerful. So, you know, with my show being called Inside the Grind, I really want each of my guests to tell our listeners what it takes to become the best version of yourself, you know, and what it takes to be LITA, or, you know, just to be like like I said, the best version of themselves and to be successful. So, you know, what is, you know, your process and grind? What has that looked like for you?
Yeah, great question. I've always believed this. I think that when we speak of becoming the best version of ourselves, I think we are already that. I think our creator created us to be the best, and therefore it's already within. However, there are some people that choose not to fully express this, or perhaps too vulnerable or scared even not to have the bravery to live in that truth and really understand it in an outwardly way. Meaning I can feel like I'm my best version, but what are my actions saying, right? I can feel it, but how does the world know that I'm my best version? It's because of the way I treat myself, how I treat others, my intentions and purpose in life. I think people already have that, but are you choosing to outwardly live that way is the question. And I like to say that I am very intentional about my life these days and what I want to create. So the best version is already there within you. I'm convinced, because you were created with divine ingredient to be that. And so all I like to say is I try to encourage people to live that truth, to really be brave and courageous in and understanding your uniqueness truly is your gift, because no one wants to be like anybody else. And then, I think for me, in pursuit of having this bravery to always constantly be the best version of myself, to understand that it happens in the present, it happens today in every choice that I make, whether or not I'm going to choose to cut somebody off, or simply say the right thing to the right person, or smile at a stranger. I think the best version of ourselves doesn't have to be in this grandiose way of like being, say, an entrepreneur, or starting or creating or inventing. Sometimes the best version of ourselves is simply perhaps the influence we have in our very own children at home with no one else watching. So I also like to say that, because, people always take, well, I don't have the time to X, Y, and Z. You don't have the time. That's totally fine. All you need to be is move with integrity. Is to be the best version of yourself is sometimes just integrity in what you do and what you say and how you say it. I also think that for me, in pursuing a life that I love, which is my key motto to life, literally is just pursue a life that I love so I can do the best and be the best that I can be in this life, is also having enough grace and patience to also fail. Sometimes when you speak this way, people think that you're constantly in this state of positivity and have endless amounts of energy, and that is not the case. Sometimes I am very down, and sometimes I don't have the energy, but I find that I have the strength to then continue and see a new day as a new day, is because I allow myself to just be not so cool sometimes, and that's okay too. It is part of the human experience, and I think that's also what keeps me in this idea of being the best version, because if my best version means that I need to sit down, chill out, put my feet up, or say no, then I'm going to be that. And that's what I think continues to fuel this idea of being the best version of myself, because I'm very cognizant of preserving energy or giving energy to where it's needed by my choice. And I think lastly, I would say that my message to people that struggle with this idea of the best version of themselves being attached to a lot of work is, or perhaps having, or what's the word I'm looking for? Not having the motivation to even better themselves. I always say, even in a workout, if it gets hard, dedicate it to someone you love, because sometimes we show up in this world for others before ourselves. And I know if I dedicate this to say my sisters who I live for, I never quit. There's just no quit in that, because I've dedicated it to them. And so if you're a parent, you understand, like, this is hard, this is hard, this is hard. But think about your child. Would you quit on your child? No. So I think that if you're in this pursuit of like, I just don't have the motivation to see this idea or pursue this best version of myself, then perhaps don't do it for yourself. Do it for someone you love, and then you'll find that your motivation will come from nowhere outside of just your love for someone else outside yourself,
Oh my gosh. Yes. That is so powerful. That is just so powerful. You just thank you. Thank you for sharing that. But I feel that you touched on something, when you said that like it's okay to say no sometimes. Like sometimes, like personally, like I feel like the need to say yes because I don't want to let that person down, but I feel like in order to take care of yourself, it's important to say no sometimes. And now just like how, like you've touched on it a lot, but how important is self-care? How important is taking care of yourself and just doing the things that bring you joy?
Yeah. I mean, I can't speak on this enough. I always say you've been given a life.
Mm-hmm.
Have a life. And in this life, my name is LITA. I live in this skin with this hair and this body. And this idea, this idea of self-care can only come. I always, we are multifaceted people, especially women, and no disrespect to men, but women especially are wearing, and I've said this before, like wearing many hats, doing many things, doing many roles, whether or not we're keeping a household together, tending to our children, our spouses, working, running businesses. Like there's a lot going on for women these days in this era, in this century. And I think that it is also really natural. It is nature for us to be nurturing caregivers, that often, very often, we neglect ourselves. But if you neglect yourself, you're going to run the engine dry, and therefore you cannot continue to be the vehicle that can help and support other people if you do that. As a very busy woman, I have 4 amazing bonus kids that are in my life and a husband that also works a very hectic job. He understands that as much as I give to this family, it's only because I can take care of myself first and foremost. Mm-hmm. And so this idea is saying, like running the marathon, right, with the family, with the life, as everybody does. And then come Sunday morning, you're like, self-care. I need it. I need to step away. And whether or not I sleep in the mornings and choose not to make breakfast for the whole family, or simply take a walk around my neighborhood by myself, like leave me alone, no questions, do not come with me. Simple things. And in these days, for me, self-care is simple acts of kindness to myself. It is not this grandiose, so like I need to plan a vacation and get away for weeks at a time. It is simply having 5 moments to light a candle and say my prayers, or as the sun goes down, maybe be in a meditative state in my backyard where the kids are not allowed to come out until I'm ready for them to, or being in the bathtub by myself, playing my favorite playlist and a candle burning. Like I keep it really simple because that is probably all that I have time for, just so I can recharge and then service everybody else that I love. But I have to start with self-care.
Thank you for sharing that. But just from your experience of coaching, what is something that people who are on the journey of self-discovery, what is a mistake that can be made?
I think that people often compare their journeys to others. I certainly did. I used to think that I had to be this or be that, or practice yoga.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to practice self-care, you have to be into yoga, Yeah. And then I realized that ain't for me. As much as I know the benefits of it, I'm not that person. I'm not that person to pick up habitual habits naturally if it just doesn't feel like something I enjoy. That simple. So I think a common mistake is that other people typically compare their journeys or what they should be doing or how they should be feeling to other people that perhaps say come across enlightened or have done it or walk that path. I think the idea of self-discovery, self-development is very, very personal. Very personal and subjective. What works for me will not work for you, and vice versa. I think this idea, if you just simply start with, I want to create a life that I love, because this is how it started for me. I'm very conscious of what I love or what makes me happy, what brings me joy, and then everything else that doesn't. And so I always choose this.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously my list is going to be really different from yours or the next person. And so I say to those that are on this journey or wanting to consciously make better choices for themselves, do it for yourself. Don't do it for others, and do not compare yourself or what you should be doing, thinking of feeling to somebody else. Keep it very subjective and make this simply about yourself.
Yeah, I feel that comparison. I feel that's something that social media kind of, you see all your friends, you're scrolling through, and I feel that, yeah, you start comparing yourselves, because you see everything on social media. So thank you for touching on that. What would the Lita now tell her younger self?
Well, that's always a good question. Oh my goodness. I think I touched on this before. I would really tell myself that my personal happiness is my responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
I used to think that I needed, this the definition of happiness was always connected to somebody, whether or not it was my sisters, my family, or a spouse or a boyfriend. I'm now in a relationship with my husband.
Yeah.
And I made it very clear to him early on when we were dating. It's like, hey, it's not your responsibility to make me happy. And it's not my responsibility to make you happy. Me showing up in your life, supporting you in certain ways, loving you, is my responsibility. If that brings you joy, awesome. But if for whatever reason you're removed from my life, and not by means of divorce, but he works in the film industry as an example. And if he's gone for 3 months at a time and he's no longer here to make me happy, I can't say, well, because you weren't here to make me happy, I don't want to be married.
Yeah.
And that's an example, right? But what I'm saying is, when I was younger, I always thought my happiness was attached to someone else or something else. And I think that's perhaps one of the most unhealthiest things young people can do, because then it perpetuates in other ways. Like, if you think that this person is to make you happy and that person no longer is in your life, you're unhappy. Unhappy people make bad choices. Bad choices lead into life-changing experiences. So to me, it has a very negative effect if not caught and recognized really early. So absolutely, if I had to tell my younger self something, it would be to understand your personal happiness is your responsibilities, no one else's. Start defining it for yourself, so you can own that and use that as a tool to move forward in certain adversities that you're going to face.
Thank you for sharing that. I feel that that's something that I can relate to, because that's something in terms of like attaching myself to someone, to make them happy. I've been there. And so I totally understand. And that's just so powerful. But what has being like, have someone, what is being someone meant for you and, your career?
Oh my gosh. I think first and foremost, I think that I'm so proud to be someone, and it's never fair to say that I'm also not Tuvaluan too, because my grandmother is actually full Tuvaluan but moved to Samoa when she was 14.
I'm sorry, let's say Polynesian, the word Polynesian.
Yeah,
sorry.
Polynesian. I think for me, most people say they're proud to be whatever ethnicity they are. And I am no different. And I think outside of just being proud because we all want to wave our flags and love our cultures, I think for me, more than ever, because I was so young when I left my home nest, and I know the Polynesian community will understand, when you leave your family base, you feel very detached from the very tribe that you call family. But at the same time, my mother used to always tell me, she goes, if you ever feel like you lose your way, just remember where you came from. Because your core center and the foundation in which you were raised is always going to be the strongest foundation you'll find. Just remember who you are and where you came from. And that was so key for me growing up as a young adult, being away from the family physically, because I realized there's so much richness in the Polynesian way. And little things now I recognize that I've taken for granted. When I meet people that may not have a good relationship with one of their parents or even a sibling, like I have no understanding of that. I have zero understanding, and in fact, I somewhat don't know if I can trust that type of person. Like I'm one of those. Because family is so key, and I think everything beautiful about who I am is connected to an upbringing, the Samoan way, understanding that I am loyal, sometimes too loyal.
Yeah.
And the family unit always comes first. And we like the idea that you never not like work things out, or you never, like, not in my family. We just, like, if someone has a tiff, it's a tiff for 5 minutes, and then you work it out. There's no, I ain't going to talk to you for 2 years. There's none of that. And I think that is kind of very, it speaks true as an adult now, because I handle problems straight away. I don't like things lingering. If I have an issue, I speak on them. I am loyal. So I'm very understanding and open to hearing other dynamics so I can fix the problem. I don't know. Does that make sense? Like, I just feel like outside of just being like, because I'm Samoan and I'm proud, it's like, no, I realize that how I was raised is key and fundamental to how I am as an adult, and how I show up as a wife, how I show up as a mother, how I show up as a business person, and how I show up as a friend. And so I give everything to that upbringing and my family. I can't speak of it any highly, to be completely honest.
No, amen to that. That's just amazing to hear. But to anyone that wants to be successful in their life, what would your message be to them?
Oh, be true. Yeah. Simple. I think success doesn't mean you have to make millions of dollars every year. Yeah. Success is a high level of integrity and literally having the bravery to live your truth, whatever that is for you, whatever you give your time and energy to creating, how you do your work. Just be true to that. Never fake the funk. If you're feeling that you're faking anything or trying to appease someone else, I'm telling you that will not be a successful life. So I think what I love so much about where I have been able to become, because I was not this many years ago, is this idea that I am who I am. And if you don't like it, that's fine. Yeah. Then leave. Just be out my space and I'll be out yours. But I show up and just give you who I am all the time. I do not bite my tongue. I'm just not apologetic just to take up space and express myself the way I believe is of a high integrity to who I am. And I think that a lot of people shy away from living their real truth and bite their tongues a lot. And I think that if you're living that way, it cannot be aligned with success. Be true to yourself always.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for that message. So at the end of this, when you're looking back on your life, like 30, 40 years from now, what do you, as you look back, what do you want to be remembered as? What do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, wow. I think legacy is such a strong word, and I use it often. And I don't know if I've ever been able to say what I want it to be. I think if I think of like my great grandkids ever looking up a family tree and saying, my great grandmother grew up in Australia with a Samoan family, moved herself to the other side of the world by herself, literally with no job aligned, no friends, didn't know a soul, was unfamiliar to a city, and made a life for herself, and then became an entrepreneur and worked for herself. I think that the idea, and not so much what I did, but having the characteristics to do it, having the bravery, having the strength, having the perseverance, having the resiliency to walk down this path and succeed. and not succeed because she became this multi-billionaire, but succeed because she found what life should be about, just pure happiness and living passionately with integrity. I think that just something simple like that would make me so proud, to hear, those that would come after me speak of their great grandmother as someone that lived very fearlessly, and succeeded, and in doing so held a high integrity, would make me happy.
No, thank you. No, that's amazing. But now, Lita, we are in the home stretch of things, and what I love to do is do some rapid fire questions. So the first thing that comes to mind. Okay, well, I think you kind of touched on the first one, but so your favorite quote.
Oh gosh, there's so many.
Yeah.
The first thing that comes to mind is something my dad shared with me when I was young. He said, "Baby, don't ever chase money. Don't chase money." He's like, "That's just a waste of time, and it's very temporary." He used to say, "Never chase money. Chase being the best at whatever you choose in life, and the money will come. But just be the best." And I would say that's the first thing that comes to mind. It came from my dad.
That's awesome. Okay, so the second one, what are you currently binge watching?
Ooh, that's a really good question. So can I say that I became quite obsessed with a show on Hulu called Snowfall?
Okay.
I think there was one full season or two. Can't remember, but I binge watched it, and then COVID hit, and we've been waiting for the next season, but it drops on tomorrow. So I'll be not officially watching or binge watching, but I'll be binge watching it as of tomorrow.
Okay. Alrighty. Okay. The third one. If you could have dinner with 4 goats, you're at dinner with 4 other people. It could be anyone. Who would those 4 people be? You're at dinner, you're having, you guys are having some wine with some food.
Dead or alive?
Dead or alive. Yep, dead or alive.
Man, I think I get 4?
Yes, you get 4.
Okay, first person, Jesus Christ.
Yes, okay.
I need to know what he looks like.
Yeah.
I need to know. For sure, Jesus Christ. The second I would say is my grandmother's mother.
Oh, okay.
On the Tuvaluan side, because I hear that there's a legacy of her and her healing gifts that my mother especially has been very intrigued by, and is also learning to tap into those gifts and what our family legacy is on the Tuvaluan side. I would love to be able to have a conversation with her. And golly. I've always said that Will Smith.
Okay.
Will Smith and Jada Smith, to me, they move in a different type of way. They kind of vibrate on a different type of frequency that I think is a little bit before their time. And so a lot of people kind of think they're weird and whatever. But I actually would love to have a conversation with him, because I love his approach to how he lives very presently and in his life. So Will Smith will be invited to my dinner. And I think my last and final, God, I think if I can't speak of bravery and resilience if like a Harriet Tubman.
Okay.
Who have put herself in excessive danger that way, and do so like for her whole life. I think I'd want to hear her story face to face. So I would pick her.
Wow, that sounds like a very powerful dinner. I would just love to be a fly on the wall. So that'd be Jesus Christ, Harriet Tubman, Will Smith, and then of course your great grandmother.
Yeah,
grandmother. Wow, that's awesome. Okay, let's do the fourth one. Your favorite song right now?
Oh gosh, I should be prepared for this. Golly. So this will be silly, but I'll just be honest, because this is what's been on repeat, especially as I've been working out. Not Bush City Limits by Tina Turner.
Okay.
like my favorite song will always change. So I could pick a really cool song to share, I'm sure. But I will say when I've been trail running, so there's a hike up a hill, and I've been running it. I've been trying to test myself about how fast I can run it. And for some reason, when that song comes on, I start thinking of Tina on stage whipping that hair and those.
Yeah.
I was like, that one gets me going. So I would have to say, Not Bush City Limits, Tina Turner is my song right now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, and then your favorite book.
Oh, there's so many. I think one book that has had a significant impact on my life right at the beginning of a huge change, which is before I left for the United States back in 2007. I read The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren. It is Christian based. And it really had me kind of shift the way I was thinking, how I wanted to live my life and why I wanted to live that life. And I think that changed my thought process as a 20-something-year-old about to embark on a huge transition. And so I would say that one there, I'm going to mention amongst many others that I could, but I'd say The Purpose-Driven Life.
No, okay, thank you for that. Now I can put that down. I can include that in my book because I love reading. So, okay, now let's do the last question. This last question. So, I want to continue highlighting our people in our community on this show. Who would you like to see here as a guest?
Oh my goodness. So, like someone in the States or like someone
anywhere in New Zealand, anywhere.
Let me think. Are you familiar with a soccer or football star, depending on how you see the sport, by the name of Tim Cahill?
Tim Cahill. Oh no. Is he
like an Australian icon? And he was a young kid that grew up playing soccer. I'll just say soccer so we're not confused by actual football. That left his family. He's half Samoan also, to pursue the professional football in England, and had a ridiculous come-up story, returned home, retired recently as literally an icon. He cannot walk down the street without Australians flocking to him.
Really?
Half Samoan, half British.
Okay, we'll figure out a way how to get him. I'd love to. His power, his story just sounds amazing.
Yeah, he's incredible and super family boy. Like, was very successful, but super humble. Like, you wouldn't know that he was this mega star. Okay. So, very cool.
No, okay, awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. We'll definitely. Oh gosh, I'll have to look him up. But no, thank you. But LITA, I want to say thank you again. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us all. I'm just so grateful that you could be a guest, and you're, who you are and what you're just so empowering. You make me want to just do better in my life. And I hope your story will inspire and just give hope to anyone listening. Show them that they can achieve anything they set their mind to by putting in the work and just committing and dedicating themselves to becoming the best that they can be and trusting the process. Thank you all for tuning into Inside the Grind. And LITA, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for doing what you're doing. I think this is very powerful. And I hope that your audience really take the value from all these conversations. Thank you. I'm honored to be a part of it.
Thank you. Oh, wow. That was so awesome. Oh, my gosh.
Grinding all my life, sacrifice, hustle pay the price, one slice, got the roll of dice, that's why all my life, I've been grinding all my life, grinding all my life, sacrifice, hustle pay the price, one slice,